Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host, as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 99 of the show, and I know it's, episode 99. And we're really close to the 100th episode special, which I've been working on for a while now. I'm being actually serious. I've been working on this one because there's a lot of thoughts and things that go into it, to say the least, because this isn't, specifically this episode and the next episode are probably going to get me in some deep water, mainly because I'm probably going to piss off a lot of people with it, but that's okay. Because both of these topics, whether it be episode 99 or episode 100, both of them involve heavy discussions to be involved because, as you guys voted on the poll, we're going to be talking about the iPhone SE, which, granted, I know the poll was 50-50, but I decided to go with the iPhone SE discussion mainly because it really will transition smoothly into episode 100. And episode 100 is also going to be another discussion. I'm not going to tell you what it is because, duh. But aside from that, we're talking about the iPhone SE. And what specifically about the iPhone SE? I'm not going to be talking about specs. I'm not going to be talking about if you should buy it or not, because a lot of people have already done those discussions. There's plenty of videos out there. What I mainly want to focus on is commentary regarding, I'd say, the reception of the phone, what it represents, and really how tech enthusiasts are kind of being very hypocritical in this situation, in my opinion. But before we go into it, I want to do a little bit of house cleaning first, because house cleaning is good. You need to clean your house once in a while. Probably most of us haven't been doing that, but aside from that, house cleaning. Again, thank you guys for all the love and support, for continuing to support the show. Obviously, thank you for constantly downloading the show, listening to the episodes. I hope you guys really enjoyed last week's episode, and because to me, it was the most fun I've had in a while doing an episode, to be honest. Well, I wouldn't say fun, but it was allowing me to express more feelings and emotions with y'all that, I haven't done before. And it was very nice to be more open, to be more genuine, because that's what the real talks are for. They're meant to provide more insights into who I am as a person, and at the same time allow me to share with you a lot of the things that I think about on an everyday basis. So again, thank you guys for listening to those episodes. It really means a lot to me that you guys do. Aside from that, going into today's episode. So we're talking about the iPhone SE. Why am I saying that tech enthusiasts are being very, fickle about this thing? And it's a plethora of reasons. I know a lot of people have been talking about this on Twitter. I've been talking about it on Twitter, and I'm going to be sharing some of my comments that I've shared on Twitter regarding the iPhone SE and sharing what I view in regards to this phone. Granted, I will say this now. Would I buy this phone? Not really for me, to say the least. Not really for me, personally. But for who this phone is targeting, it is a steal. I'm going to start this discussion by stating my opinion in regards to this. I personally believe that the iPhone SE is the best $400 smartphone you can buy, period. I know a lot of people take that as a hot take, because when you say that on Twitter, it pisses off a lot of people because they start bringing up this. Like, they start listing off a ton of things that say, oh, this is not worth $400. And we're going to be talking about that, to be honest. We will. And I'm going to be providing my takes and going from there. So, addressing a lot of the concerns, or really quote unquote issues people have with this phone. They talk about the bezels, they talk about the screen, they talk about the body, like the actual body being used, which is an iPhone 7/8 body. They talk about, battery life being an issue. They talk about, like if your battery can't hang, if you have all this, good hardware and et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to be going through and breaking down each one of these complaints. So going in with the whole bezels. Yes, clearly this is a phone that uses a design that has been around for many years. Clearly, this is clearly dated design, and we're not going to pretend that it isn't. Yes, it is clearly dated. It definitely shows when it was really made and everything like that. It clearly shows, and we're not going to pretend it doesn't. But I will say this. You also have to keep in mind what this phone really represents. This phone is not meant to be the latest and greatest, like absolute peak iPhone to be sold, because there's a reason why we have 4 iPhones coming this year. Those 4 iPhones are the top of the top. They're meant to be the big boys. And you also have to keep in mind that, yes, this is a replacement to the original iPhone SE, but at the same time, it also is replacing the iPhone 8, because when the iPhone 11s came out, they didn't get rid of the 8s. They actually kept them, and they just reduced their prices. And so this is replacing the iPhone 8 because, as time would actually say, the iPhone 8 is going to be obsolete pretty quickly. And we're not going to pretend that. Like, obviously, in terms of software updates, I know, isn't the iPhone 7, this is their last year for them? So wouldn't be surprised if the iPhone 8 is going to kick the bucket next year. And really, they're going to stop selling them because, that's why the iPhone SE exists. So the whole complaint with bezels and dated design, I understand where it's coming from, because we're all accustomed to these, giant glass sandwiches with massive displays and, like bezel-less. Like in my case, like I have my iPhone, my OnePlus 7 Pro. And yeah, it has a really, really massive screen to body ratio. Very minimal. Obviously no notch, because, everybody that knows this phone, it has the mechanism, the pop out camera. But yeah, it's a dated design. So what? It's not, you get what I mean? Like, this phone is targeting a very, very specific group of people, but that very specific group of people is also the large consumer base. They are a very, very large consumer base. And this goes on to the next discussion, which is really talking about, the whole design of it as the design as a whole, because it causes things like people complain about battery life and, stuff like, it's using an old design, it's a smaller phone, so its battery life is going to be terrible. But you also have to keep in mind that iPhones recently have been having exceptional battery life. You don't believe me? The iPhone XR had incredible battery life in comparison to the iPhone XS and XS Max, mainly because those phones really weren't that good. But the iPhone XR had exceptional battery life. The iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max, exceptional battery life. The 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max, easily full day phones, no issue. Heavy work day, no issue. They last the entire day with no issue. Apple's current battery technology is definitely improving. They're definitely doing something that's improving not only the battery, but also in terms of a software, because the A13's, improved battery optimizations. And you have to keep in mind, this only gets better as time goes on. So yes, even though the iPhone SE is using the iPhone 7, 6, 8 body, etc., I can keep going. Even though it is using that body, it is still having the internals of a modern iPhone. It still has the A13, which is still going to make it battery efficient, incredibly battery efficient. It has the new Apple batteries, which surprisingly don't seem to degrade as quickly as the other ones, which that is a key point to keep in mind, because you can check in your iPhone settings or any Apple product your battery life's, lifespan. What is the percent of its actual lifespan? And many people have reported that it hasn't even fallen below 100% since having it, since like the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro since last year. And that's very impressive that it hasn't. And it's interesting that a lot of people seem to be skipping over this, because they talk about, this phone can't last all day. It can't handle my heavy workflow and everything. Well, duh. It's not meant to do that. It's not meant to do heavy, intensive things. It has incredible hardware that can do it when it wants to, but it's not meant to do that job. It's a $400 smartphone. You get what you pay for. And what some people seem to constantly be saying is that, this needs to be comparing against, say, flagship phones or anything that's like top of the top. And I'm like, no, you can't compare this to a flagship phone, because it's not who it's targeting. the realistic comparison would be the Pixel 3a, and the Pixel 3a gets stomped by this phone in performance and video quality with no issue, and even software support, let's be honest. And the Pixel 3a is not even running a good processor, keep in mind. And this really leads into the next debate where people are saying stuff like, oh, you have to think about what kind of Android phone can you get for $400 that's better than this thing. And I'm like, there's nothing that provides this level of healthy compromises for this price point. There is nothing that does what this phone does and what it represents. There is nothing close to it. I know some people say, oh, I can just buy this cheap Android phone and get a better display and get better battery life and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, how about the software support? Is that thing going to get any updates at all? Is the specs inside of it okay? Cool. Specs get outdated pretty quickly, and Apple Silicon has still been ahead of the competition for over 2 years now. Like, minimum, it's 2 years ahead of Snapdragon's, Qualcomm's offerings. The Apple's homegrown silicone has just been incredible, and a lot of people love those processors because of how insane they are and how Apple is, really pushing the boundary with these things, because they really are. They're incredible pieces of hardware. And when you think about it, realistically, there's no phone that can guarantee you 5 years of software updates besides an iPhone. And I know a lot of people say, well, that doesn't matter if you have bad battery life and it degrades in a year, but it hasn't, because that has been disproven very quickly. You can keep saying that all you want, but the facts are the facts. Like, people have shown the battery life has not degraded horribly over time. And yes, has it happened with older iPhones? Yes, but you also keep in mind, with older iPhones, those processors are older processors. They're not as efficient as the new ones. So of course, when you give it a software update, yes, it is not going to be as efficient. You get what I'm saying? And it is a natural process. And you also keep in mind, even the Pixel phones, they get a maximum of 3 years software, which is the most that it's actually gotten. Samsung can't even promise you the kind of software support. OnePlus can't even promise you. And they're actually more consistent, at least, than Samsung, which that's a win, Samsung just gives you good hardware that lasts, but at the same time, it's not going to get all the software and security updates very consistently. While Apple, you're always going to get updates every day, which good quality, bad quality updates, that's not really the discussion, which we can talk about that another time. But the fact is that they're giving you 5 years of software support is insane. Like 5+ years. There's no other company that can say that. And it's baffling to me that people would say stuff like, oh, I can get a better display and everything, better battery life. Okay, what are you using your phone for? You have to ask yourself that question. What are you doing with it? And this really leads on to the next point, which is really who this phone is made for. And this phone is really for people who have older iPhones that are willing to upgrade, are wanting to upgrade, and really for anybody that just wants to have a solid iPhone in their pocket that doesn't break the bank, just to have an iPhone. And that's something that a lot of people don't seem to realize, is that most people, if you notice in bigger companies, say, this is experience that I have been shared, somebody has shared their experience with me working in high level executive positions in companies, and they noted, think about it like this, boy, or really, bucko. When I was in those meetings, this is my friend telling me this with his experience being in those big executive meetings. I look around the room. I look at everybody's phones. The most common thing you see is either the most expensive Android phone currently on the market or an iPhone. Predominantly, you will always see an iPhone. Why is that? The security that comes with it. There's many features that come with iOS that, granted, I personally would never use an iPhone. That is my personal opinion, is I wouldn't. But I understand that from many people's perspectives, it's the only logical choice, because there's so many things that I would say Apple has done with the iPhone as a brand. Because I know, yes, it is a brand. It's a status symbol. It's when you see that logo, hey, that's quality right there, because that's what Apple has done. They've definitely place themselves as a brand, and they've done an exceptional job at it. But there's a reason why a lot of higher I'd say people in higher positions and the average consumer prefer an iPhone because there's some things that come with it that just Android will not give them. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow because we're very subjective. As people, we like to be very subjective and not be objective. And as we've discussed multiple times with Juan and other people that have come on the show, objectivity is the most important thing in these situations because we cannot let our subjectivity be presented as objectivity because it isn't. Like, that's your opinion. This phone may not be made for you. That's okay. It's not meant for you. But for somebody else, this is perfect. And what's baffling to me in this sense, specifically how I'm viewing it, yes, I do not believe that this phone is meant for tech enthusiasts. It's not. It's literally the antithesis of everything tech enthusiasts want. Because tech enthusiasts want the biggest phones, the biggest batteries, the best cameras, the highest refresh rate displays. The average consumer could give nothing about. They could not care less than, they can't even give anything. They won't even give it a train of thought. That's how much they care. They do not care about this. They do not care about what tech enthusiasts care about. And you also have to keep in mind, tech enthusiasts are a small minority. We are not the majority. The average consumer is the majority because they're the ones who go out and buy these things. They listen to tech enthusiasts for advice, but the tech enthusiasts are not the majority, but they are the loudest because we're very loud and we're very stubborn sometimes. And the iPhone SE just represents what they don't like, what's outside of what they consider normal, you know? And yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes that you have to be honest with yourself and say, look, this is a phone that does not give us what we want. But to the majority of people, the people that we are sharing our opinions with and, trying to be as objective as we can be, they're the ones who care about this. So we have to be as objective because we cannot let our subjectivity be presented as fact, as hardcore fact, because it's not. The reality is yes, the iPhone SE may not be made for you. It may not be able to play games at the highest refresh rate, or it may not be able to take the best pictures, but it still takes good pictures. It still takes good video, which I would say is still better video than most Android phones. It still will get 5 years of software updates. It has great battery life. It has wireless charging. It has water resistance. It has, the modern Apple, I'd say, aesthetic, let's call it that. But even though it still brings an older form factor that a lot of people like, because you have to keep in mind, people seem to really like the small form factor because smartphones are getting bigger. Like, think about this. My iPhone 7 or my OnePlus 7 Pro is 6.67 inches. This is a massive phone. And to me, I like bigger phones because I like what comes with it. It's easier for me because I like using both my hands for a phone. But there's some people that prefer the smaller form factor. That's why the original iPhone SE sold incredibly well, because it targeted a market of people missing that 4-inch form factor. Granted, yes, this is 4.7 inches. So it's not the same because it's not that tiny, because realistically you can't put that much power into that old small frame because it's just not realistic. But you can put it inside the 4.7 inch model, which is the iPhone 8. You can do it. And that's something that a lot of people don't seem to realize, is like Apple compromised in the areas that they needed to. And they actually, if you think about it, are actually more resourceful than other companies because they realize, look, we have this older body. Let's stuff it with all the newer parts that we can, compromise in the areas we can compromise in, and sell them a phone and meet the consumer halfway. Because if you think about it, this is the right phone at this price point. It really is. It's the best phone that you can really buy this year for $400. It is. And I know some people say you can buy older flagships, but you also keep in mind those older flagships get outperformed by this newer piece of technology, by this newer iPhone. You also keep in mind too, those phones say they've been out for a 2-year-old flagship or a 1-year-old flagship. You can get it for the price of the iPhone SE. Keep in mind, it's already a year old and it won't have that kind of software support. You get what I'm saying? This phone, brand new, 5 years from now, still going to be running perfectly fine. And it has all the features. It has water resistance. It has wireless charging. Some people are mad that it doesn't have a fast charging brick inside the box. It doesn't need it. It's a small phone. It has a small battery. That 5 volt battery, that 5 volt brick that the traditional iPhone bricks that everyone hates, it will charge that phone quickly. You might as well call it fast charging. because that's exactly what it's going to do. It's going to charge quickly, and you have wireless charging, and it leads to a whole massive discussion that just shows that trusting tech enthusiasts, or really maybe not the best idea, because sometimes we like to get very subjective, and sometimes when companies do things that we don't like, or things that doesn't directly benefit us, we tend to get very emotional. We tend to get very subject heavy. We don't tend to be objective as we used to be, because we're like, oh, this isn't as good as this. You have to keep in mind, it's not meant to do that. That's why the new iPhones are coming. That's why we're going to have 4 iPhones this year. We're going to have a 5.4 inch. We're going to have 6.1 inch. We're going to have another small iPhone. Like, you get what I'm saying, is we're going to have other options available later down the road meant for us. You get what I'm saying? This is not meant for us. The iPhone SE is meant for the average consumer. They are the ones that drive the market. They're the ones that spend the money because they are the majority. The majority runs the market. That's how the market works. A lot of people don't seem to understand that, because that's just the reality. Is the market does not function the way tech enthusiasts did, because if they did, the market would crash horribly. That's why the average consumer is important. They're the majority. As tech enthusiasts, we are meant to guide these discussions, meant to guide these conversations, and meant to provide wisdom in these situations, not personal opinions that can lead to some issues down the road, per se. And that's just something that we just have to be honest with ourselves about and think about it, because we're kind of fickle sometimes. Tech enthusiasts, we flip-flop a lot. Like, sometimes we say, oh, this is the best thing you can buy right now. 6 months later, this is the best thing to buy. And like a few weeks later, this is like, you know what I mean? Is things change for a rapid pace for tech enthusiasts, and being consistent is hard. That's the reality. Being consistent as a tech enthusiast is really, really hard. And it takes time, because it takes a lot of self-evaluation of yourself to be honest. Basically, it takes you to be honest with yourself and be like, look, maybe I'm not giving this the fair shake that it should. Maybe I'm being very subjective and I'm letting my emotions get the best of me. I'm only thinking what's best for me and not thinking what's best for the most people. And it's hard, but that's the responsibility that comes with being a leader in these discussions, is you have to be mindful of what's going on around you. You can't just go in guns blazing, because then there's going to be some casualties. There's going to be some issues. And that's something that as tech enthusiasts, we have to be mindful of. We can't just gun-ho this, because it's not going to work. You cannot gun-ho this discussion. You can't. And I know that's going to make a lot of people mad, but that's the point, is even though, yes, this may not be the best phone ever, it is still the best $400 smartphone on the market. It is still the most affordable iPhone, and that carries a lot of weight to say the most affordable iPhone. The fact that Apple was able to keep the price point the exact same as the original iPhone SE is astounding, that they were able to pull this off. If you think about it, it's incredibly astounding that they did this. But that's because they were already had tested hardware, and they just put in newer specs, and it worked. It was actually, if you think about it, it's actually the smartest idea too, because it's also good for recycling, because they already had a lot of parts there. They had all these bodies there. They just needed something to put in it, and they already had that. So put it together and you get a recipe for success. Yes, it may not be the best phone. Yes, it has dated design. It has futuristic specs, because the A13 is a monster. Yes, its battery life, yes, it can get through a whole day of normal use. That doesn't really mean gaming. That just means social media, calls, text, etc. It's not meant to do heavy video editing, and that's why you buy a flagship phone if you really want to do video editing on your phone, which most of you don't even do it to begin with. So why are you complaining? And you get what I'm saying? This is a phone meant for the average consumer who's looking for a new iPhone, or somebody that just wants an iPhone in their pocket for security, just to have a work phone. I honestly would say that this is most realistically a good work phone. If you're going to go to work, yeah, I would use this as a work phone just to take calls. If you have another SIM, because most people have another SIM already, they have 2 SIMs, one for work, one for personal use. I would use the iPhone SE as your work phone. It makes a lot of sense. It has good security. It's meant for work, so you're not really using it just besides phone calls and text and communicating with clients or whoever you need to talk to. And it just makes sense. You get what I'm saying? This isn't rocket science. This isn't complex. This isn't complex. You get what I'm saying? This is straightforward. And tech enthusiasts are being very disingenuous and doing the average consumers and their listener base is a disservice by stating a lot of negative, unnecessary criticism. I'm not saying this phone is perfect. I'm not going to say that. I'm not saying this phone is free from criticism, that it doesn't have any issues, because it does. It deserves criticism and where it deserves it. At the same time, there's healthy, constructive criticism, and then there's unhealthy, non-constructive criticism. There's a lot of unhealthy, unconstructive criticism going on right now. And some people think that it's constructive, but in reality, it's not. And that's because, perspective is key. That's what we have to realize, is perspective is very key. Perspective is reality. We may not think that we're being, providing unhealthy, constructive criticism, but in reality, we are. We may not think that. It takes somebody calling us out, but then obviously then that causes more issues. And you get what I'm saying? It's a cycle that it takes us to be mindful and to be as objective as we can be and evaluate our thoughts before we share them. It takes whoever is sharing information to think about what they're going to say beforehand and then go from there. I spent time thinking about this because I'm constantly talking about this with people. I'm constantly talking about this idea because, in my opinion, I view this as the best $400 smartphone. It doesn't matter what you think if you can get another Android phone for the same price. Okay, cool, go get it. And what? You're not going to get it? What, you get what I mean? It doesn't really change anything. Like, you get what I'm saying? Is like, this phone is not meant for you. It's not meant for tech enthusiasts. This is everything the tech enthusiast community despises. They do not like regressive features. They like new, futuristic, new ideas. They like new hardware. They don't like old stuff. They don't. But for the average consumer, they like Touch ID. They like the bezels. They like that they can have modern specs in a familiar design, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You get what I'm saying? That's how people are with computers. Like, most people keep old computer cases unless they're just, just not that good. Like, it's just how things are, guys. That's how the regular actual market works. There's a big difference between tech enthusiast markets and consumer and prosumer and business markets. Big difference between the two. Way bigger difference. The tech enthusiasts are willing to take a chance. The average consumer, business, prosumer, they don't want to take chances. They want tested, proven hardware. They want what works and does the job. They do not want to play, oh, this is really futuristic and really high tech, but there's also a big downside with. No, they will not play that game. You have to realize that that's not how the market works, because every market doesn't work that way. Every market always focuses on the average consumer. They do not focus on the small minority that's the loudest. They take advice from the small minority, which are tech enthusiast companies, but even they deal with issues because the tech community, like I said, is very fickle. Tech enthusiasts are very, very fickle because they hot swap a lot. Like, they change opinions like they change underwear. And it's crazy because that's how it really is one moment they're like, yeah, we want all these features in your phone. You need to put all this in there. You put all this in there and then it will make it good. Then they give it to you and then bam, garbage. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's exactly what happened with OnePlus. And Apple, yeah, they're going to take advice, but they're going to take advice with what the market has actually shown that they want. You get what I'm saying? It took Apple time to put 3 cameras onto a phone. It took time because they're like, okay, what does the consumer base actually want? The average consumer is like, hey, we'd like 3 cameras. They did it. They wanted wireless charging. They gave it to them. Granted, I don't think they should have taken away the headphone jack because, well, yeah, they wanted to push their AirPods and now AirPods Pro. But you get what I'm saying? Is they may not do the best thing all the time. And I'm not going to say any company does, because these companies will always do what's best for them. But the smart thing is when they actually compromise and meet the consumers halfway is when we see progress. That's when we see healthy growth in a market that a lot of people have said it already has peaked. We do not need innovation right now. We need compromising. We need prices to go down, not up. This is a good move because it's going to make Android manufacturers make better smartphones in that price range and not shell out garbage. Like, not ship out this trash that is not good. That's not going to last long. It's going to make them, push forward, make better products in the $400 range and cheaper, make them better, make them more usable. and not make things that are going to get outdated very quickly, and they'll start running slow very quickly, and and start giving better support. Because you have to keep in mind, this is an iPhone. This thing's going to have a ton of accessories. It's going to have a lot of support. It's going to have places where you can go fix it very easily. Apple Care is very cheap. It's only $4 to $5 to $7 a month. Like, that's insane. And you could take it to any Apple store and go get it fixed, and they'll give you a new one too. And you just pay a service fee, but that's a different thing. But you get what I'm saying, guys? This is what's best for the market. I know it hurts a lot of people's feelings. It probably hurts a lot of people for me to say it, but it's just the truth. This is the best $400 smartphone you can buy, and it will be the best selling phone of the year. Maybe even next year. Maybe for a couple of years. It might be the best selling phone for years to come. Who knows? But you know what I'm saying, guys, is there's a reason why this phone exists, and it exists to address the concerns that the market was asking for. We do not want expensive phones. Give us a phone that does all the basics, has good specs, and has good support. And they gave you that. And now the consumer base is thrilled. This phone is selling like hotcakes. People going left and right and buying them. People that said they would never buy an iPhone are buying them. Like, you get what I'm saying is, it's a good phone, guys. It's doing its job. It may not do the job that you want, but it's doing the job for everyone else. And I hope you guys don't get really butthurt about this. Like, it's just me being very blunt and honest with you and being objective. It took time for me to do this episode because I could have done this a while back, but I decided not to. And it also helped that what happened with the OnePlus 8 definitely made this so much easier on me, because it just showed and proved my point, and it proved everyone else's point. Guys, tech enthusiasts, we need to do a better job in leading these discussions. We cannot be subjective in these issues. We can be subjective, but we have to make it very clear that it's our opinion and that it's not fact. That's the difference. Your subjectivity is not objectivity. What you believe is not rock hard facts. It's your opinion. It's how you view things. Your experiences have shaped your viewpoints. Be mindful of other people's perspective and input. Don't just shut them down. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. It really means a lot to me. You guys keep coming back and sharing them. It really does, because, I love you guys to death. Obviously, we're getting everything ready for the 100th episode special and getting things very, situated. We're pushing forward. I'm excited to see where this goes, especially with the 100th episode special, which it's going to lead into more of this style of discussions, because it's really fun. But I thank you guys for being patient with me. I know I'm not doing another episode this week, mainly because of finals. So please forgive me on that. But obviously going forward, we will be able to do more consistent uploads in the foreseeable future, because obviously school will be done. So please keep your thoughts and prayers. Finals are going to be not so bad this year. It's going to be actually pretty easy this semester, to be honest. But thank you guys for everything. Please be safe, guys. Please continue to take care of yourselves. Continue to be smart. Don't be dumb. Do the right thing, and continue to be awesome. Just continue to move forward, push forward. And, in these hard times, it's kind of hard sometimes to think about it that way, but just take care of yourselves, take care of others around you, continue to be safe, wash your hands, don't do anything dumb. Please have a wonderful weekend. Please be safe. Like I said, please don't do anything dumb, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye, guys. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.